Everyone. So this final panel will be the undergraduate research panel, and let me. Yeah. So there are three papers, and these three papers are part of the intermediate advanced econometrics course taught by Professor Alok K. And kudos to these three teams. All of them are undergraduate students at UNM, University of New Mexico, and some of them are economics majors, some of them are statistics majors. And they had their mentors thanks to Nikhil Ganvir, Neeraj Khatiwada, Thaneshwar Paneru, and of course to Professor Alok K to come up with this beautiful idea of stepping into the world of research. And without further ado, let me introduce to all these young minds to present their papers, which was prepared within a semester, less than a semester, right? So thank you, everyone. Also, if you have any questions, please put it in the chat box. I will keep a note of it. And at the end of the presentation, I will ask the questions to the respective presenters. Thank you. First presenting team will be Ahmed, Amine, Jawhari, Carlos, and Silas. Please share your screen and you can start now.
Great, thank you, everyone. So as mentioned, our team is comprised of Ahmed Amin Jawhari, Carlos Ortega Lujan, and myself, Silas Wyatt, and we'll be studying the effects of air pollution on school absenteeism in Siddharthanagar Municipality of Nepal. Thanks to the 16th Annual Himalayan Policy Conference for hosting us. Carlos?
As for our motivation for this project, see that air pollution is a big killer across the world, as the WHO estimates that in 2012, approximately 3.7 million lives were lost that could be attributed to air pollution, with 88% of this death burden coming from developing countries. And additionally, a 10-unit increase in the daily AQI in China results in approximately 87,570 absent students across the nation, leading to a daily cost of $1.31 billion US. As for our literature review, we see that positive correlations between PM10 levels and primary school absenteeism in Japan and Korea. We find correlation between exposure to carbon monoxide, sulfur dioxide, ozone, and school absenteeism in China. And furthermore, we see a weather effect occur, in which in the winter, the cold air prevents the pollution from rising, making it worse. However, we do not see this in our study. As for evidence from the US and Europe, we find same correlation between pollutions and absenteeism in Texas, while further studies find correlation between socioeconomic factors and absenteeism. As for our contribution for the literature, we are the first model that we know of to draw data from Nepal in this nature. We approached the problem from the household level rather than the aggregate level. We examined a concrete source of air pollution, which are the brick kilns, and we additionally account for indoor sources of air pollutants in the form of cooking stoves.
So our research questions when approaching these data were, do outdoor factors of air pollution, specifically brick kilns, affect school absenteeism of children in Siddharthanagar? And our secondary of interest was, do indoor factors of air pollution, specifically the type of cooking stove use, affect absenteeism? And our hypotheses being that both of these factors do affect absenteeism. Our data set is 480 variables taken across 610 observations. This was taken from a survey conducted between June 7th and July 6th of 2019, conducted in Siddharthanagar, Nepal, and it was funded and supervised by the Nepal Study Center of the University of New Mexico. Some key variables we used in our model, our dependent variable is school missed, which is simply the number of school days missed in the last 30 days due to illness. Our outdoor independent variables, we examined brick kilns, which is just a dummy variable equaling 1 if the household is in a city ward with a brick kiln, 0 if otherwise. We also look at log of road area, which is the logarithm of area of roads in the household's city ward. Our indoor independent variable is clean stove, another dummy variable, equaling 1 if the household uses an LPG or electric cooking range, and 0 if otherwise. We also use several socioeconomic controls, the number of children in the household between ages 5 and 18, the number of years the household has been at its current location, the education level of the household's head, and the household standing on the wealth index based on the PCF method using 18 different assets ranging from mode of transportation to various sorts of technology and appliances around the household.
As for our descriptive statistics, we see that school days missed has a mean of 0.312. And for our explanatory variables, we see that approximately 19.5 of households live within a brick kiln or close to a brick kiln. We see that the mean of log road area within a ward is approximately 12. And the mean of, of people who use, of households who use clean cooking stoves is approximately 21.3%. Clean cooking stoves in this context being gas or electric. Furthermore, these are our descriptive statistics for our control variables. If anyone has any questions about these, they can ask at the end of the presentation. And here we have the visualization of our data in which we can see that use of a clean stove over no use of a clean stove decreases school days missed by 0.12. And furthermore, we can see that absence of a brick kiln versus presence of a brick kiln decreases school days missed by about 0.23. For our model and methods, the first model we decided to use is a log linear model, in which we took the natural log of school days missed plus 1. We added the plus 1s, we wouldn't have any natural log zeros. We took that plus the effect of brick kilns, log road area, clean stove, our control variables, and the random U.
We also used a Poisson model for a second examination, which seemed particularly appropriate since the days of school missed is a count variable. We used the same independent variables, brick kiln, log road area, clean stove, and all our socioeconomic controls.
As for our empirical results, here we have the log linear regression model, the results of that. And which is good. We can see in each model we can see that brick kilns have a significant effect. In fact, we can see that the significance increases in the third model, which is when we add the control variables. Unfortunately, though, in our log linear results, log of road area nor clean cooking stove are significant in any of the models. However, we can see by AIC and by BIC that the third model is the best in both cases.
Moving on to our Poisson, we see a strongly significant effect of brick kilns on school absenteeism across all three models, both when accounting just for outdoor variables in the first model, including indoor and in the second, and then including socioeconomic controls in the third. The log of road area seems significant at the 10% level for the first two models, but this drops off when socioeconomic controls are included. And clean cooking stove is significant at the 5% level when socioeconomic controls are included. Once again, by corrected AIC, our third model is our preferred one. So we find a significant effect of brick kilns on school absenteeism across all models. Based on this finding, we believe that new brick kilns should be built in areas with low or no density population. An additional focus should be placed on updating the technology used to run these kilns. Additionally, existing brick kilns should be subjected to a regulatory oversight by the local government, perhaps some form of air quality testing in the direct area. Our Poisson model reveals positive returns to school attendance when cleaner cooking methods are used in the home. So we believe a local information campaign on the benefits of clean cooking should be employed, along with long-term efforts to build the necessary gas and electric infrastructure to support it.
As for shortcomings and potential future research, we can see One of the major shortcomings of our data is that it only captures one time frame, which is a limitation of it. We can change much about it, which limits our ability to do long-term studies. Furthermore, there is no objective rating of air quality within homes, which is also a limitation of our data. So for potential future research we can do, we'll do a randomized rollout of air pollution measurement devices across homes in Nepal. And this data could be collected over a longer period of time and be more objective than the data that we have.
We'd like to thank our mentor, Niraj Kadwada, for your valuable insight over the course of the semester, not just providing the data, but also with the regressions. We'd also like to thank Professor Bahara and his assistant, Nikhil Ganvir, for their help over the semester. Thanks to the Nepal Study Center for providing the data. Thanks again to the Himalayan Policy Research Conference for hosting us, and the University of New Mexico Economics Department. Our colleague, Ahmed Jawhari, will now be taking questions for the Q&A period. Thank you.
Yes, we have a couple of minutes left for the first presentation allotted timeline. If anyone wants to ask any questions, please feel free. Also suggestions. If not, please try to form your questions and please ask them at the end of the panel. Let's move on to the second presentation. It will be by Ethan Sandweiss and Matthew Goldman. It's the presentation of impact of political views on support for carbon tax policies in the United States. So Ethan and Matthew, please share your screen and the presentation and go ahead.
And you can see our screen currently?
Perfect.
Perfect. Alrighty, hello everyone. My name is Matthew Goldman. I'm here with Ethan Sandweiss, and today we are presenting on the impact of political ideology on support for carbon tax policies in the United States. Along with our mentor, Thaneshwar Paneru, and Dr. Alok K. We are happy to present this.
And so first I wanted to go over some of our motivations for this research project. And so as many of us know, climate change is a significant global threat. The World Health Organization estimates that over 150,000 deaths are caused every year just by climate change. And climate events like fires, hurricanes, and floods are increasing in frequency due to climate change. And so with that being said, we wanted to look at how a carbon tax can slow climate change, specifically the drivers for support for carbon tax policies. And some of our research indicated that carbon tax policies can slow climate change. Specifically, one was enacted in Britain in 2013, and 9 US states do have some sort of carbon taxing or carbon limiting, but that's mostly in the form of carbon credits rather than a tax scheme in particular. And there is minimal literature on the drivers of support for carbon tax policies. And so we wanted to augment the existing literature with our project.
And so yes, with those drivers, we aim to determine the significance of each of those factors. And so we've got two main research questions here. The first being, does one's political ideologies impact their willingness to support carbon tax? With that, we believe our hypothesis is political ideology will impact one's willingness to support carbon tax policies. Our second main question is, does one's belief that human activity is a main proponent of climate change impact their willingness to support carbon tax policies? Again, our hypothesis being belief that humans play an attributable role in climate change will impact one's willingness to support carbon tax policies.
And so as part of this, this research project, we conducted a literature review that revealed that voters do have a negative bias towards taxes in general and tend to prefer items like green rebates, although they may not be as effective. And so that in itself is kind of a detriment to support for carbon tax policies in general from voters. We also found that views from US individuals on climate change are shaped by factors including personal experiences, partisan affiliation, and meteorological events that individuals have experienced. And also that individuals who believe in anthropogenic or human-caused climate change are much more likely to worry about climate change. and that climate change skepticism does increase marginally as religiosity increases. Specifically, values such as ideology, religiosity, and cultural bias can all impact perception of climate change and climate change issues.
So yes, as we begin to examine our variables, our data comes from the 2017 National Survey on Energy and the Environment, which was collected by researchers at Muhlenberg College in partnership with researchers at the University of Michigan. 929 adult respondents responded to the survey that was conducted via the phone. And from this survey, we have picked a few main variables of interest that we use to examine our research here. Our dependent variable is that carbon tax support. Our main independent variables include political ideology, cause of climate change, and the belief in God or gods. Our control variables include education level and income. And then our second set of control variables is additive, so it includes education level and income, but as well as age, gender, race, and region. Here we see definitions for each of the variables. They are all categorical. Here we see the definition of category levels, as well as the frequency and percentages. Looking at cause of climate change, for example, we see that only natural patterns is our base, which means we'll be comparing the combination of natural and human activity against only natural patterns, as well as human activity against only natural patterns. This will allow us to make some conclusions and some analysis that we present later on. But here we see, again, the category levels, the frequencies, and the percentages for each of these categorical variables. Now here we can see our first set of control variables, which is education level and income. Again, both categorical variables that include our base being our highlighted level. And then here is our second set of control variables. These four, again, are all categorical. And again, with the base being present at the top of each category level.
And so here we can see with our data visualization that there is a trend line here between political ideology and the support for carbon tax. And so we can see that as an individual identifies as more liberal, their support for carbon tax increases. And then on the next slide, we can also see that belief in human-caused climate change does also impact the probability of an individual to support a carbon tax. And so we can see that as an individual identifies that they believe anthropogenic climate change is caused by more human activities, their support for a carbon tax does increase. And then on the next slide here, we can see that an individual's religiosity, or specifically their belief in God, does also support their, or does also impact the probability that they will support a carbon tax. And while there's not a clear trend line here, we can see that individuals who are atheists or identify as not believing in God or gods generally do have a higher probability of supporting carbon tax than individuals who identify as believing in God or gods.
So yes, to fully examine our data, we elect to use an ordered logic model because our dependent variable carbon tax support is both ordered and categorical, with the ordering being opposing, neutral, or supporting. As a result, again, we will use that ordered logic model to determine the significance of our independent variables. Now, our full model includes our main independent variables, political ideology, cause of climate change, belief in gods, as well as our control variable matrix, which includes education level, income, age, maleness, race, and region, and our D prime as our coefficient vector for these control variables. Here on our results page, we can see that there is some significance in our independent variables, primarily with political ideology, both moderate and conservative, as well as in the belief in climate change being caused by human and natural causes, as well as just being caused by humans, evidenced by the significance. Those three stars there indicate it's at 99% significant level, which is very impactful for us. As we can see in our bottom, our control 1 and control 2 indicates where our control variables were used. We only use the first set in model 3, and we use both sets in model 4. But from this, looking at our AIC criterion, it is lowest in model 2, which means we will be selecting model 2 to draw our analysis from. And again, here our model selection and our diagnostics. While we have these 4 models, we ultimately will only want to use 1 model to draw our conclusions. For this, we want to minimize the number of independent variables we see, as simple models are better for us, as well as we want to minimize our AIC. From this, our model choice includes that model 2, like I said, which only contains our main variables of interest, political ideology, cause of climate change, and belief in God or gods.
And so looking here at our analysis, we can see that we used a liberal base for political ideology. And so if one identifies as moderate for their political ideology, the probability of supporting, their probability for supporting a carbon tax by a moderate individual is significantly different by a factor of 0.47 compared to that liberal base. And additionally, if an individual self-identifies as conservative, the probability that they will support a carbon tax is significantly different by a factor of 0.23 compared to that liberal base. And then when looking at the belief in anthropogenic climate change, we used a natural only events base. And so if an individual identifies that they believe anthropogenic climate change is caused by a combination of natural events and human actions, then the probability that they will support a carbon tax policy is significantly different by a factor of 3.05 compared to that natural only events base. And similarly, if an individual believes that human actions are the main cause of anthropogenic climate change, their probability of supporting a carbon tax policy will be significantly different by a factor of 6.32 compared to that natural events only base.
And again, these are all significant at the 99% confidence level.
And so looking at our policy recommendations and future research taking our results into account, we first determined that one's political ideology and an individual's belief in anthropogenic climate change both do have significant impacts on one's likelihood to support a carbon tax. And so with that said, policymakers should generally tailor their campaigns to those who believe that humans cause climate change, and also working to educate individuals about the human role in climate change. And in addition to that, future research should include identifying a quantifiable tax metric to determine the willingness to pay for individuals in order to reduce carbon emissions. And that'll help determine a specific amount that for an ideal carbon tax. And in addition to that, it is important to research if it is more efficient to target individuals who already believe or already support carbon tax policies, or for policymakers to target individuals who do not yet support the policy. And policymakers can use the factors like political ideology and belief in anthropogenic climate change to kind of sort individuals into these categories.
And yeah, lastly, we do want to thank again Dr. Bohra for giving us this assignment, Thaneshwar Paneru for mentoring our team, helping us out, Nikhil Ganver for helping us troubleshoot our code when we were struggling, and then the researchers that collected the NSCE data for making the data publicly available to the public and allowing us to use it for this project. And we'd be happy to answer any questions. We do appreciate you listening to our presentation. Thank you very much.
We have time for the Q&A. So if you see the chat box, Professor Bohra asks, I wonder if there is a correlation between the ideology and the belief in the source of climate change, for example, humans.
And I can
go for it.
Oh, sorry. I can comment on that one. So we didn't particularly look at the correlation between those two factors, as we were looking more at their impact on support for the carbon tax policies. But I think that is definitely something that that can be further researched and probably should be. And Matthew, I don't know if you have a comment on that as well.
No, I think that kind of sums up what I was going to say. Our results align with the research we found initially. And so while this may present a problem with our results, I do believe the significance or the conclusions we drew are similar to what we would expect to see.
Thank you. Are there any other questions for Ethan and Matthew? If not, please keep your questions handy and suggestions as well. We'll get back to it at the end of the panel.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
And our final presentation will be by Aaron, Khanh, and Roberto. It's about the role of agronomical literacy on farming decisions, case study of Nepal. Great, we can see your screen.
Hello, everyone. My name is Roberto, and my partners Khanh and Aaron, and we'll be looking at the role of agronomical literacy on farming decisions today. Aaron, if you want to go to the next slide. And our research objective for today is we'll be looking at access to markets and technology and how that will affect agronomical literacy, and as well as how agronomical literacy affects the adoption of hybrid rice seeds. And our primary hypothesis for this study is that agronomical literacy does encourage the adoption of hybrid rice seeds. And for our secondary hypothesis, we have that access to markets and technology would increase agronomical knowledge. And our motivation for this study is the fact that 64% of Nepalese derive their livelihood from agriculture, as well as 36% of children in Nepal or under the age of 5 or younger suffer from stunting. And also that rice accounts for about 40% of the caloric intake in Nepal. And another motivation is that Nepal's population is growing faster than rice production. So this study would come in handy because hybrid rice varieties offer higher yields, which would help with scarcity, and better quality of grains, which would help with malnutrition. And hybrid rice varieties are also less susceptible to diseases in pets, which would help with the stress-prone regions of Nepal.
So we've looked at literature that see the factors that would affect the adoption of modern rice varieties and organic fertilizers in South Asia, which are both new farming technologies, just like hybrid seed. We found that farmers' education levels are negatively correlated with many applications to rice in wheat fields, which is consistent with our hypothesis. And also land type and awareness of new rice varieties are the key factors that influence the adoption of modern rice varieties. And awareness of new rice varieties is also, we also consider it agronomical literacy. So based on this, it supports our prediction that agronomical literacy will encourage the adoption of hybrid seed.
Okay, and so we're using the baseline survey data, which was collected by Integrated Development Studies for the Nepal Seed and Fertilizer Project. IIDS surveyed 600 households in 13 districts of Nepal with ecological district classifications of hill and terai, and this included 2 earthquake-affected districts. And we have limited the scope of our scope to households which do cultivate rice. And so we specify 2 models. In the first, we have adoption of hybrid rice varieties as being affected by agronomic knowledge, location in terai ecological region, and whether farmers buy or save their seed. Additionally, we include the impact of some socioeconomic controls. In our second model, we have agronomic knowledge as being affected by distance to nearest marketplace in kilometer, and household ownership of mobile or smartphones, and computer ownership, along with the impacts of our controls.
This is a little more detail about our main, one of our main variables, agronomical knowledge. It is, so first, we will ask the survey respondents 16 questions relating to agronomical literacy. For example, in the bottom, we can see, for example, which is generally not true about hybrid seeds, or they will be shown symptoms in different plants and ask whether they know about the symptom and how to deal with it. And then we will count the number of questions that they get correctly, which range from 0 question to 9 questions. And from that results, we will divide them into 4 categories of economical knowledge, which is very low, low, medium, and high. And this is a table of the statistics of the variables for exploratory purposes. We can see here, for example, hybrid adoption has the mean of 0.3, which suggests that we have generally a low number of respondents who adopt hybrid seeds. And economical knowledge is the mean is 0.6, which indicates that the majority of our respondents tend to have very low to low economical knowledge. And this is the summary statistics of our control variables.
Okay, and here we have some basic visualizations of the data. Now visually here we can observe higher levels of agronomic knowledge amongst adopters of hybrid rice varieties. And then this pattern continues with smartphone owners and is even more pronounced with computer owners. And finally, we have a scatter plot of agronomic knowledge over distance to market, which we can see a trend of higher levels of agronomic knowledge in individuals who are closer to marketplaces. So using logistic regression with hybrid adoption as the dependent variable, our results suggest that an increase in agronomic knowledge does increase the likelihood of hybrid rice adoption, which does support our primary hypothesis. Additionally, we find that being located in a Terai region increases the likelihood of adoption, and this may be because hybrids are more resilient and Terai regions are often rain-fed and stress-prone. Finally, the largest effect we have found was that of source, seeing that purchasing seed rather than saving it increases adoption likelihood. This may indicate that via the agricultural knowledge channel, farmers who buy seeds are more likely to adopt after having been exposed to the positives of hybrid adoption already, so they can keep buying it. So with this in mind, we have selected this model, which includes our 3 main variables as well as demographic controls based on AIC, chi-squared, etc. And so now we're using ordered logistic regression with agronomic knowledge as a dependent variable. We find that increasing distance from marketplace has a negative impact on agronomic knowledge. So those who are closer to markets are more likely to have higher levels of agronomic knowledge. Additionally, we see that smartphone ownership increases the likelihood of higher levels of knowledge, as does computer ownership. These results support our secondary hypothesis that access to markets and technology increases agronomic knowledge. And we have selected this model here, the third model, which includes our 3 variables and controls.
So from our results and our policy recommendations to increase agronomical education, we would suggest educational programs, as well as village institutions, such as farmers, cooperatives, or clubs. And to increase access to technology, we would recommend mobile apps, which would support agronomic learning, as well as mobile device tax credits, such as for mobile devices for cell phones or laptops. And for government investment, we would recommend more investment in transportation and network infrastructure, which would help increase access to markets. And for our limitations and our future work, some of our limitations include that our respondents may not report their information accurately, as well as agro-knowledge is not a comprehensive assessment of agronomic literacy. And we also do acknowledge that there may be some endogeneity issues with agronomic knowledge. And as for our future work, we will further investigate the effect of mobile learning platforms on agronomic literacy. And we will also investigate how access to markets and technology will fit in with some extension programs. And we would like to acknowledge, we would like to thank our mentor, Dr. Soumyajit Chakraborty, for your ongoing support. And we would also like to thank Professor Alok K, as well as our teaching assistant, Nikhil, for guiding us in our project. Thank you.
Thank you, Aaron, Khan, and Roberto. We have ample amount of time. So let me start by asking you questions by Siobhan. How did you determine which 9 of the 16 agronomical questions to include in your composite measure?
So we didn't. We used all 16, and we know that this isn't a perfect proxy for agronomic knowledge, especially when we're looking at only rice cultivation, and the questions include, questions about maize and other types of cultivation. But I guess we decided, since we have such a limited amount of information, that every piece of information would be valuable. So even if a farmer only knows something, only answered a question correctly about maize, then their general level of agronomic knowledge may be higher than if they had not gotten any questions correctly. But I'm sorry, to be more clear, 9 was the highest number of correct questions that were answered.
Second question is by me only. What are your thoughts on the future food insecurity? Are hybrid seeds always better, or do you suggest any agro practices related to crop biodiversification or anything, any other suggestions you have?
Well, hybrid seeds tend to offer higher yields and better quality grains, but they do have a few problems, such as nutrient extraction of soils. They can lead to higher degradation of soil conditions over time. So there is definitely a place for further research on what the best practices specifically are moving forward. Crop biodiversification is certainly a very interesting area of research that we would love to explore further in the future.
Thank you. So any other questions for anyone? Please feel free to unmute yourself and ask the questions directly. We have enough time. Any questions from the mentors, Neeraj and Thaneshwar?
Soumyajit, I just want to take this opportunity to thank the undergrad for doing a wonderful job, and the graduate mentor, and also to acknowledge that this is a very fine example how the graduate doctoral research can play a mentoring role to enhance the research capacity of the undergraduates. And I think the presentation by these young undergrads was pretty good. And you can send your emoji, clap. So pretty good. Do you have anything else, Soumyajit, right now, or are we kind of done with this thing?
Yeah, we are done. We can wrap it up.
Sounds good.